I've been a fan of farming sims since the early 2000s when I played Harvest Moon: A Wonderful Life. Since then, I've played many more, both in the Harvest Moon Story of Seasons franchise and beyond. I also really like long videos where people drone on and on about lists of facts in an organized fashion. My brain is, kinda weird. A few months back, I got into the handheld emulator console scene. I picked up a basic device that could play NES through Game Boy Advance games, and I started thinking about what games I would like to try. It was then that I decided that I finally wanted to try out the original Harvest Moon. And once I started playing, it got me thinking. What if I played 1 year of every Harvest Moon and Story of Seasons game? So that's what I'm here to do. Prior to this project, as a kid, I had played A Wonderful Life, Another Wonderful Life, A Wonderful Life Special Edition, Magical Melody, and Tree of Tranquility. In adulthood, I had played the Story of Seasons remakes of Friends of Mineral Town and A Wonderful Life, as well as Story of Seasons Pioneers of Olive Town. I'm realizing now that 50% of all the games I had played were A Wonderful Life, and so I guess it's not super surprising that I have a lot of nostalgia for that kind of boring game. Before I get too far into things, I think it's important to discuss the Harvest Moon Story of Seasons divide. I'm sure that there are other videos here on the topic, so I'll just give a brief overview. I also want to give a warning that I'm doing my best on the pronunciations, but I don't speak Japanese, so they'll likely be way off, and I apologize. In 1987, the Japanese company Natsume was founded. In 1988, Natsume formed an American division called Natsume Inc. Then, later in 1995, Natsume Inc. parted ways with Natsume and became its own company. The creator of the initial Harvest Moon game, titled Bokujo Monogatari, or Farm Story, was Yasuhiro Wada, and this game was released in Japan for the NES in 1996. This original game was then published in 1997 in the US by Natsume Inc., which I'll continue to refer to solely as Natsume. The game was titled Harvest Moon for the English localization of the game. The second Harvest Moon game, Harvest Moon Game Boy, was also created by Yasuhiro Wada, who was then at Victor Interactive Software, and this game initially released in Japan in 1997. Fast forward to 2003, and the company Marvelous Entertainment acquired Victor Interactive Software, forming Marvelous Interactive Inc., which I will continue to refer to solely as Marvelous. Fast forward again to 2008, and Marvelous begins to partner with Xseed Games, an American studio. The original creator, Yasuhiro Wada, became less and less involved as time went on before leaving Marvelous around 2008. Fast forward a few more years, and it is 2014, and Marvelous and Natsume are no longer working together. In 2014, Bokujo Monogatari, I'm not going to pronounce the rest, I'll just say the English name, Farm Story to the New World, was released in Japan from Marvelous, now partnering with Xseed for American localization. And this game was titled Story of Seasons in English. A game titled Harvest Moon: The Lost Valley was released from Natsume in 2014, a few months prior to the Western release of Story of Seasons. And this is where the confusion began. This all gets even more complicated if we factor in the European market, since Nintendo, amongst other companies, published various Harvest Moon and Story of Seasons games in the region over the years, but this is going on long enough. To make this very long story short, from 2014 on, Natsume used the Harvest Moon name for further games since they had the rights to the English name, and the Story of Seasons games could be considered the true continuation of the early Harvest Moon games. Though, it doesn't really matter because there don't seem to be many, if any, of the same people working on the Story of Seasons games nowadays. Nonetheless, over time, the Story of Seasons games began to be seen as the real Harvest Moon games, while the post-split Natsume Harvest Moon games were seen as knockoffs using the name. Whether or not that's fair is up to debate. Phew, Isn't all the corporate shuffling around fun? Time for games. In my following videos in this series, I plan to discuss the crop selection, the animals available, the relationship interactions, the music, and whatever other random things I notice that make each game stand out. I'm going to start by playing a year of every game, mostly in order, so I can discuss the developments in the franchise over time, but I will also likely put some games together in the video if they are very similar, like A Wonderful Life and Another Wonderful Life. I'm not 100% sure if I will play the Natsume Harvest Moon games as part of this series, because I have a full-time job and a family, but who knows? Here we go! I'm the Farmer Jay, and this has been my first YouTube video ever. What was the first farming sim that you played? And what's your favorite? Leave it in a comment below. See you next time!